thank you very much. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Maybe I'll just give you a brief introduction to my arrival here in this country and what really brought me here and how are things going in the last 6 months that I've been here, and also maybe a little bit of what happened in the last 2 weeks, given the Gaza events. So my first contacts with the United Arab Emirates came over 10 years ago, when a dear friend of mine from New York, who has been doing business with this entire region for over 30 years, we met and we became very good friends until today. And he is one of the main reasons I am here. But he would introduce me to UAE government officials when they would come to New York, as he knew I spoke Arabic. I'm from the region, born in Lebanon. Know the Arabic culture, the Arabic cuisine, versed in the Quran and Islam. So he found it fascinating that I could speak with the government leaders in Arabic and discuss theology, religion, politics, regional things. And so those were my first contacts with this country in New York, in the United States. But only 2.5 years ago, this friend of mine who said, I want to invite you to come to the UAE. There is a small Jewish community. It's not an official community yet, but it has the tacit approval of the government. And I would like you to come and see it. And I also would like to bring a Sefer Torah in memory of Sheikh Zayed. Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, who was the founding father of the United Arab Emirates, passed away 7 years ago or so. He says, I want to bring a Torah to the community, but in memory of Sheikh Zayed. He said, please bring me a Sefer Torah, especially a Sephardic one, those that stand with beautiful case, as it should fit the ambiance of the country. I said, of course, we'll do that. So we made the first trip. I visited the community. I got to know the community, and we kept in touch. They kept calling me for advice, for whatever it is, but nothing, no thoughts at all of coming and living here at all. A year later, when the Sefer Torah was ready, so we came again, we brought it. We were invited to Abu Dhabi to the palace of the Crown Prince, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. And we presented the Sefer Torah in memory of his father. We stayed there for a few hours. We discussed, we reminisced about our childhood in Lebanon, as he used to summer in Lebanon, because the United Arab Emirates weather in the summer is unbearably hot, over 110 degrees or so, and high humidity. Actually, it started this past week, was the first week, so to speak, of weather like that. So the Crown Prince and his family used to summer in the mountains of Lebanon. That's where I used to summer myself. And we reminisced about an ice cream parlor or the movie theaters and things like that. And that was it. That was over a year and a half ago. And I kept in touch. I kept in touch with the community and with the people here. It's only after the Abraham Accords, which I knew they were coming. I knew for over 2 years that they eventually were coming, and there's going to be a peace treaty, normalization with several countries in the Gulf. And I know many of you probably who are here tonight have had that conversation with me a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I had assured you, if you remember, that we will have peace in that region, and Israel will have diplomatic relations. We just have to be patient that it will come, and thank God they came. So after the Abraham Accords, the government requested from the small Jewish community to incorporate, to be an official community. The community was actually recognized in 2019, in the year of tolerance that was declared here in the UAE. And a very famous document called Human Fraternity was signed by the Imam of Al-Azhar University and also by Pope Francis here in the UAE, of a country of tolerance, and they declared 2019 as the year of tolerance. A book of tolerance was published where all the communities of faiths in this country were featured. One of those communities was the Jewish community, with a picture of the Sefer Torah, with people praying, and the small synagogue villa that they had. So the government requested the community to incorporate, to become an official community, to build a synagogue, but they told them that they need a rabbi. A community, a faith community without religious leadership is just not a community. And so that was the time in which they approached me, and they asked me if I would be the rabbi. I gave it a thought for a few days, and I said, I'll take that challenge. Obviously, I think the requirement was somebody who has been already a rabbi for a few years at least, has the experience, that spoke the language, that knows the region, that has connections and relations in the Jewish world. And so that's what brought me here. I saw that as a challenge, as a call, if you will, that maybe the Almighty is putting me here to change more this region for the future, for a better future in a sense. And so I accepted that responsibility, and I believe we are at the crossroads of history in this region. And if we are called upon to be part of it, I felt compelled, so to speak. I felt it's an imperative. If I was chosen, then maybe this is where I should be. And so I came. I came 6 months ago. And I was welcomed with open arms by the government, by the Emirati society, by the community. And I have opened so many doors, established so many bridges of communication with the Emirati society, with the government, and with all other communities of faith. They look up to me as the representative of the Jewish people. I'm kind of the ambassador of the Jewish people. There is an Israeli ambassador, but that's a political appointee. This is more of a religious representation of Judaism, and that's how they see me. I have written many articles in local newspapers in English and in Arabic. I have been interviewed by official news outlets. I was featured as the three religious group, three Abrahamic religion, right? Islam, the greatest imam, the head imam of the UAE, the representative of the Pope, the cardinal here of the UAE, and myself as the Jewish representative. We were invited to participate in what's known as the Majlis of His Highness, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, which he does every year during Ramadan. And we were invited to participate, to speak, and to also have a dialogue with His Highness. And so that was seen by the entire population. They repeated they filmed the program, of course. They repeated it many days during Ramadan for 30 days. And so I'm considered, in a sense, that official representative of the Jewish people. They've been very nice, as I said, very cooperative, very helpful. They want the community to build a synagogue. They're going to be giving us a land. We are basically waiting for that land in the next few weeks or so, location at least. They want us to be proud of who we are, and they want to welcome us back. To me, on a personal level, it is like closing a circle. As I was born in the region, yes, in Lebanon. I was born in an Arab society, the Arab culture. I heard the Muazzin when I was a child, up to, from age 1 to age 10, that I lived in Lebanon. I smelled the aromas of the markets. And so coming back is like kind of closing the circle, going back to my childhood. So I felt, and as I said, that responsibility to take. So in the last 2 weeks, before actually those 2 weeks, when I landed here, of course, I was apprehensive a little bit, even though I have been here a few times before. I was apprehensive, but I understood that this is a very safe country, very well protected. Security services are second to none. I walk with my kippah on my head the whole time, anytime, anywhere. In this country, and I get only either shalom aleichem or salam or smile or welcome. People sometimes wanted to take a picture with me with the kippah. Many of them heard about Jews. They have not seen Jews. Now they have. In the last 6 months, they have seen plenty of us. And so it was welcoming. So I asked one of the ministers if I need a protection, if I need a bodyguard to protect me while I'm on the streets and things like that. So he told me, are you afraid of something? Did anybody try to attack you, said something to you, anything like that? I said, no, nothing like that, nothing at all. He said, if you want, we could definitely put one for you, and it would be our pleasure to do it, but we don't think you need it. But if you want it, we will put it, with pleasure. He said, but let me assure you, he said, that from the moment you came down from that plane, we have been protecting you. So security services are second to none in this country. Crime is extremely, extremely low. White collar and blue collar crime is really very low. And so I feel very secure. In the last 10 days, actually, I was in Israel exactly when the war started and left exactly when the war ended. In fact, when I arrived that Monday afternoon, an hour after my flight, that's when it all started. I was received with fireworks and all kind of sky explosions. Unfortunately, I had to run to the shelter many times. Two of those, 3 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. To the shelter, and we returned that Thursday. And that Thursday night, ceasefire, came. But I received only text privately and also on social media from my friends here in the Emirates of support of Israel, of support of the Jewish people, of friendship. Did not receive any negative one from anyone that I know. There were, of course, in social media some negative comments, but they were not really from the Emirates. They may have been from the surrounding countries here. And there have been several articles and pronouncements from the government officials in support of Israel against terrorism and against Hamas. Of course, they're very concerned about the humanitarian situation there, as we are all. But all in all, it has been a very positive experience. Unfortunately, even during this time, in which the Abraham Accord not only are standing and nothing has happened, but in fact today there was an announcement of an Emirati student going to study in IDC in Herzliya. This was announced today. And it was announced with pride, and the government official issued a congratulatory statements to him and to the bilateral relationship between Israel and the UAE. I guess I could stop here if you want. If you have any questions, any comments, we could go from there.
Joseph Flashner had wanted to ask, what are the chances of an interfaith dialogue between Islam and Judaism, and would you encourage it?
Well, I have been already conducting and participating in interfaith dialogue for, I would say, for almost 2 decades. I have participated internationally and nationally. I've been at the Homme de Parole Congress of Imam and Rabbis in France. I have been in the Baku World Religious Leaders Summit. I've been in Sri Lanka conference of also national reconciliation and religious leaders. I have been also in the United States, in New York, tri-state area, interfaith dialogue. So do I encourage interfaith dialogue? The answer is yes. However, what's the purpose? Those interfaith dialogues are not theological dialogues. We are not trying to see whose religion is more important, is better, or is correct. Those dialogues are strictly to get to know each other, to be friendly with each other, and to help each other in situation in which there might be some conflict amongst our communities at large. And that is the purpose of those dialogues. Of course, some of those international dialogues that I participated in the last 2 decades were a rapprochement in Israel between Jews and Arabs and Muslims. And again, those were not theological dialogues. They were only dialogues to find commonalities between the two communities, how we could help each other, how we could know each other. I do believe that you need to know the other person. You need to know their traditions. You need to know their ways, their needs. And by knowing each other, you feel closer to each other. By feeling closer to each other, you embrace each other. And by embracing each other, you maintain peace. So yes, interfaith dialogue is important. Again, you need to know from the beginning, what are you going to accomplish in that interfaith dialogue? I'm engaged in that here. Now here, I do have theological discussions only because they want to know more about Judaism. They want to know more about Jews, about the religion, and they're fascinated to see that Islam and Judaism are two very, very close religions. Now, I knew that since a child, but many of them here, the imams and the average Muslim, don't know that. And the more they see of us, and the more I explain to them, the more fascinated they are by seeing how close it is. And many of them believe, Judaism was there, and Islam is a sister religion, was a daughter religion of Judaism. So yes, I have engaged in theological dialogue, but that's only because they want to know more and they want to learn more. I have Emiratis want to learn Torah, they want to learn the words of the prophets, they want to learn Hebrew. There's already few ulpans here in UAE, Hebrew classes, and they find fascinating also that Hebrew and Arabic, also there are two sister Semitic languages. The letters are pretty much the same. The pronouncing of the letters is pretty much the same. Let me just make here a note that Ashkenazi Hebrew is definitely not the same as Arabic. But Sephardic Hebrew or Mizrahi Hebrew is pretty much the same because the pronunciation of those letters is exactly the same. So they find that very, very fascinating. And so that type of dialogue I have been involved. I mean, if I give you just some example, the word, the Hajj, the Hajj, the famous pilgrimage to Mecca, where that word comes from. Hajj is written Het Gimal, right? But they pronounce the G as Je. And now, if you read it in Hebrew, is Hag, right? What's a Hag for us? Right? For us are the 3 pilgrimage holidays, Passover, Shavuot, right? And Sukkot. They were pilgrimage holidays to Jerusalem. The same concept. They have when they surround the Kaaba all around many times when they go visit. That's very similar to the Hakafot that we do around the Mizbeach in the temple in those days of Sukkot that we do all around during that pilgrimage. There's just so much common, really common. We have kosher food. They have halal. The animal has to be slaughtered, shchita, like we do, and they don't eat the blood either. And so they're very, very similar things. It's we are 2 sister religions and we are 2 sister languages. And I must say we are 2 brother and sister communities. And so that's what we achieve with those dialogues.
It sounds absolutely wonderful to have this kind of brother-sister relationship. Do you focus at all on the narratives of of the different religions, or at least the the Israeli narrative, in terms of the Jewish community and the general public, about the legal rights of Israel? This is Goldie Steiner's question. How informed is the Jewish community and the general public about the legal rights of Israel to the land, to Israel?
Right.
And what is the general stance about the goings-on in the last 2 weeks?
Right. So there are many Emiratis, even from Saudi Arabia and from other countries in the region, that have made already videos explaining why the Jews are the righteous inheritors of the land of Israel. The first 10 chapters of the Quran establishes very, very clearly the lineage of the Jewish people from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They speak about the slavery in Egypt. They speak about the exodus from Egypt. They speak about Moses, Moshe, and they also speak about arriving to the land that God has given Bani Israel, which is Bnei Israel. So there is no question about that. The Quran states it very clearly. Many of the Muslim theologians, moderate Muslim theologian, I must say, they state it very clearly without any reservations. It is only the unfortunate extremists and the unfortunate radicals who want to change that or want to interpret it differently. And that's what this country, the UAE, stands for moderate Islam, for what they believe to be the true Islam, where it recognizes the Jewish people, the Jewish religion, and it recognizes that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. So that debate exists in social media, and that debate exists also in our society here. We don't engage too much in political discourse because the population here varies from over 192, 93 countries. And so you have a lot of views, but most of those views are kept private and personal, except the view of the government, which is supportive of the state of Israel.
Wonderful. Are there not the Jews that are becoming part of your congregation or your council? Are they generally people who were in hiding and not coming out because the religion was not recognized, or are they really new people coming from Israel?
Well, I met the Jew that has been here the longest. He is 42 years old. Yeah. And he's 42 years old, and he came here at the age of 2. His parents brought him. He's not the oldest Jew, is the longest Jew that has been living here. We have Jews that are older than that. So I think Jews have been here 40 years and less. Now, there may have been some Jews that came with the British, because this used to be a British colony. And they may have come with them in the petrochemical industry or in government, Jews in government. But of course, they did not live here as Jews or as Jewish community. But the Jews that have been here for 40 years, 30 years, some of them lived Judaism privately because it wasn't known. But in the last 13 years, things have been quite open. They had the tacit approval of the government. Nobody walked down the street with kippah then or shouting, "We are Jews." But they got together and they did some prayers together, and they had some social events together, holiday parties and holidays gathering. They did have starting 12, 13 years ago. It became more formal 7 years ago when the actual, what's called as the JCE, the Jewish Council of the Emirates, was kind of established as a community by 2-3 people. And slowly they collected more Jews, and more Jews knew about it. They got together and they joined the community. And the community officially, as I said, was featured 2 years ago in the Year of Tolerance, and last year was registered right after the Abraham Accords. So, and the origin of the Jews really comes from A to Z, from Argentina to Zimbabwe, the US, United Kingdom, France, Morocco, Switzerland, Italy, South Africa, South America, Israel, of course, Turkey, Greece, pretty much from everywhere Jews are here. There's no local indigenous Jews. It's not like going and living in Syria or in Egypt or in Tunisia or in Lebanon or in Morocco, where those communities date back thousands of years, some of them. No. Here, although it is known that there were Jewish communities in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, definitely before the advent of Islam, during and after. There was a very well-known Jewish community in Medina. There was a well-known Jewish community in the Hijaz region of Saudi Arabia. Very well-known Jewish families and tribes that live here. So that is well-known. I'm not exactly sure if in the area of the UAE, which is more on the eastern part of the peninsula, if there were actually Jewish communities or not. Most likely, this area was all desert except the coast. There is a emirate, part of the 7 emirates that make the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, called Ras Al Khaimah, which is the northern part, the pointy part closest to Iran, if we may say. They found recently, and I'm saying recently, maybe a year to 2 years ago, a tombstone with Hebrew writings that they have dated it 500 to 600 years maximum. So that shows at least a Jewish presence. They didn't find any other tombstones, only one. So could he have been a member of a Jewish community living there, or he was just a traveler, a businessman who they used to travel by boats from Iraq all the way to India, passing by here by the Arabian Gulf, and maybe he stopped to sell his merchandise, or he got sick and he stopped and he was buried here. But it is not known that there has been a Jewish community in the United Arab Emirates. In the Arabian Peninsula and Saudi Arabia, definitely. In Yemen, 2,000 years, of course. In Oman, similarly to the UAE. In Bahrain, for example, there is a Jewish community that is 140 years old. That is the oldest community that is still going, 140 years. It is made up of Persian and Iraqi Jews who left Iran, 100 and something years when there was actually a persecution of the Jews in Iran then. It's nothing new to Iran to persecute Jews. But there's a whole story of the Mashhadi Jews that were forced to convert to Islam in the 1860s, 1865. So some of those escaped to Bahrain and formed a Jewish community. And so the Bahraini community, as I said, is the oldest. 140 years. They have a synagogue. It's an old community made out of Iraqi and Persian Jews. But in Qatar, there isn't an indigenous Jewish community, although there are Jews in Qatar, there are Jews in Oman. I just had a bat mitzvah in Oman last week.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia, we know that they have, I would say, thousands of Jews there. A lot of, if not businessmen, but professionals that live there and work there. A few of them live as Jews. Oman, as I said, likewise, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, the 6 GCC countries.
So, of course, Qatar is in the news quite a bit these days. Is there any chance that they will stop funding Hamas and become part of this nice group of nations who are living kind of happily and trading with each other and sharing all kinds of life experiences?
We hope so. We hope so. But I think for Qatar to join the circle, there has to be more of a comprehensive agreement because Qatar is supportive of Hamas and although they say it's not that they're supportive of Hamas, but they're supportive of the humanitarian help to Gaza. And in fact, some of those monies passed through Israel because Israel agrees to that support. So, but as I said, Qatar, I think is going to be more when there is more of a comprehensive peace in the region. But other countries, I believe, they will come before.
And do you think that anybody is going to get in the way of U.S.? What about U.S. sanctions on Iran? I mean, what is the feeling in the rest of the region? Do they want them lifted? Do they want them to stay in place? I mean, they're a danger to a lot of other countries in the region.
The consensus that I hear here in the UAE and in the region, they are not happy with the Biden administration's opening up to Iran and recycling the nuclear agreement. They were very happy with President Trump's administration policies and approach to the issues of this region. That's what I get. That's what I hear, and that's what I understand. They are waiting with anxiety or anxiousness to see what is going to happen.
Sarah Lehman would like to know, do you think their support of Israel in the last 2 weeks has stemmed more from their opposition to Hamas as a puppet of Iran than out of love for Israel?
No, I would not say that. I would not say so. I would say pretty much is equal. They understand Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they have said so. They understand that, and they consider Hamas to be part of the Muslim Brotherhood, which this region is completely against, and they're trying to prevent them to infiltrate any of those Arab countries. So they believe that, and they also believe that Hamas receives money from Iran, and Hamas represent false Islam or radical extreme Islam, which they're not in accord here. But they feel the same way about Hezbollah, but they also feel that Israel has the right to defend itself, that the Jews have the right to the land of Israel, and so I wouldn't say. More because of they hate Hamas that they love Israel. I think it's a very well-balanced attitude and approach.
So with such good relations between Jews and Arabs in the UAE, it sounds almost idyllic. How do we get this truth across to everybody that Jews and Arabs can live together very peacefully?
Well, I guess the more we speak about it, the more we write about it, the more people come and visit here and see it with their own eyes, I think the more people will hear about it. There have been MOUs signed between the UAE and Israel almost in every single human endeavor, in science and technology, in medicine, in agriculture, in security, in cybersecurity, in medicine, everything, education, in tourism. It is an accord that is really bearing its fruits. Next week we have the Jerusalem Post Conference in Dubai.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. I'm not. June 1st to June 3rd. If you want to join, please come in. Yes, and it's going to be there's going to be Israeli politicians, Israeli businessmen, Emirati politicians, Emirati businessmen, all participating in one hall with one conference.
That's a giant step. Giant step. Are you recognized as the official representative of Judaism? And how, as an Orthodox rabbi, do you represent those Jews who practice conservative or reform or other rituals?
Right. So yes, I am recognized by the government as the representative of the Jewish community. And as a Jewish community, we are kind of an umbrella community where Jews can practice their brand of Judaism, so to speak. So far, we are very small in numbers to have different denominations or practicing denominations. But in our group, we have Ashkenazim, we have Sephardim, we have Orthodox, we have conservative, we have egalitarians. But our services are traditional services, which in many countries are conducted, even though the members of the community may espouse different level of observancy, of keeping the laws, the Torah, and things like that. But when it comes to official prayers, and it's all done traditionally, so that way everybody can participate.
Right. That seems to be the way that services are conducted in the United States. Traditional, and everybody sort of goes to within the Sephardic world.
Yeah, within the Sephardic world, yes. So I joke here with some of the members of the Jewish community. I say, this is an Arab country, and therefore we have to follow the Sephardic traditional prayers. So that way, because as you know, Sephardic Jews never divided into different denominations.
Right.
Services are traditional, milestones are traditional, and people in their private home and private life, they do whatever they feel comfortable with. But when it comes to synagogue and official milestones, they follow tradition. So that's what we are here.
So where do you see it going from here?
Well, I see strengthening the Jewish community. I am sure, and I believe that the Jewish community will be growing from four types of population, Jewish population. So first, we're going to have the regular tourists who might come for a week or 2 weeks, either American Jews, Israeli Jews, European Jews, South American Jews. They'll come for curiosity, for exotic place. So they'll come. So those will be here for a week to 2 weeks at a time. And as such, we need to provide them kosher food, prayer services if they look for that, so on and so forth. The second type of population are those Jews who come to do some business here. And they might come for more than 2 weeks. They might stay 2-3 weeks and come several times a year to do business here, as business is really very good in all areas of commerce. And so those people will also stay here a longer period of time. So we also have to consider them and serve them as needs, with kosher food, with synagogues, with holidays, and so on and so forth. The third type of population are going to be those same businessmen who decide to make a residency here, but they will still go back and forth to their country of origin. That's because there's no income tax and there's no corporate tax. There's no corporate tax either. So it's good for them to reside here, even though they might go, back to their country of origin for many months, but at least they'll stay here for the required months for residency, and they will establish a business here. They will open up businesses and offices. And of course, those will become part of the Jewish community. And then lastly, the fourth type of population will be those who are, if not escaping, but leaving behind anti-Semitism, like the Jews in Europe, France.
Jews in America.
That's my next one. And Jews in the United States, exactly. And many of those, they will find a safe haven here. Again, the weather is beautiful. The country is beautiful. They're going to feel very safe and welcome, and they're going to do business. They're going to make a good living here, And so the four type of population that I believe that within the next 3 to 5 years, we might end up with like 5,000 Jews, and maybe in 10 years we'll end up with 10,000 Jews. I guess depending also on the situation in the U.S. and Europe. But what I have been seeing in the last week in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, and other areas of the United States, attack on Jews in Borough Park itself, in Brooklyn and Manhattan, is astonishing. I tell you, I walk here, as I said, with my kippah on my head. I don't even look back. I don't even worry about anything. In New York, I would have to. In fact, in New York, I was almost assaulted last year during Corona when walking down the street on 2nd Avenue and 66th, 67th Street. one of those hoodlums, he says, you brought the disease. You Jews are the sick ones. You brought the disease here. This was in New York in the middle of the day. And so I think many of those Jews might find the UAE as a place to relocate if they're not choosing Israel for that.
Are you spending time learning each other's narrative? In other words, from the point of view of Zionist Jews, we have a narrative going back 3,500 years, and it's not just historical, but it's a legal right to be in Israel. And I mean, do you spend time trying to, and I'm sure the UAE has a similar narrative that I don't know. Do you spend time trying to understand each other's history?
Well, as I said, many of them, they want to know more about Jews and Judaism. They want to know about history of Jews. Yes. Religious, no, but also history. Okay. History. And many of them have confided in me by telling me, we are so sorry that for 73 years we were told of a wrong narrative, of lies, of a made-up history. And we are so thankful that finally we are able to open up our eyes and see the real narratives. We feel that our history and our relationship has been hijacked by the Palestinians, and we are so happy that we have freed ourselves from that and finally seen the true narrative and the true history. That's what I have been told by many people here.
So do you think that the group in the Abraham Accords will have an ability to influence people in Israel or even people in the States or people outside of their immediate circle to understand the Israeli narrative? Because here we're just hearing occupiers, and it's very disturbing.
Yeah, you don't hear that word in this region. Definitely not by government official and not by society. There might be some in social media that they still use that word, but you don't hear it in the street. Many, as I said, have seen what Israel has gone through because of terrorism, and many have said that they are really happy that they can finally see the true narratives. The many of these countries in the region, especially those that signed the Abraham Accord, have already changed their school books as how they teach about Israel, the region, and Judaism. Morocco has done it. The UAE has done it from the moment that they signed and even maybe before they signed the Abraham Accords. Morocco has done it. Even Egypt has done it, and Bahrain also. So they have taken action to change that narrative, and in fact, they have stopped supporting madrasas and schools that outside the region in the U.S. or in the PA territories that they have. They have stopped supporting even UNRWA. With any of those schools that they still maintain the old narrative in their school books. So that's a change.
You've effectuated so much so many wonderful things that I hesitate to move to a different kind of topic. We are so appreciative of all the work you're doing. But I bet some of us are a little bit curious about how your family reacted to this move and just a little bit on the personal side.
Well, my wife is here with me, and she has been here since Passover. The first 4 months I came by myself to prepare the territory, so to speak, and then so she came for Passover and she stayed. My rest of the kids, they came to visit for Passover also, but my youngest is 21. They are all married except that last one. So they all have their life in New York, their families in New York. They were very excited for me because they knew it is something that I like to do. It's something that I have been involved for many years. So they saw it as if not a culmination, but the realization of my decades of work on behalf of the Jewish community and the Jews.
And is there like a social society for it doesn't have to necessarily be just Jews. Like how is it socializing
It's there is a organization called Sharaka. Sharaka is a social organization composed by Emiratis and Israelis. We socialized together. We had a Lag LaOmer celebration combined with an iftar during Ramadan. There was a beautiful video circulating in social media. If you want to look for it, it's called Sharaka, Sharaka, Sharaka. Beautiful organization of Emiratis and Israelis. There is also the UAE Israel Business Council. There is the Abrahamic Business Circle. There have been a lot of organizations that combine Israelis and Emiratis. And there's a lot of events. I'm invited at least once or twice a week to attend those events as the rabbi of the country, of the community. And so, yes, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Yes, great. And the other thing I'm curious, is there as much business, is it equal, like Emiratis going to Israel and Israelis coming to the UAE? Is it kind of equal in terms of are the Emiratis?
They are. Well, yeah, they are. And let me tell you that in December, January, we had over 100,000 Israelis here.
Wow.
And not all of them were Jews. We had a Druze business delegation. We had a Muslim business delegation. We had a Bedouin business delegation here. All Israelis from different religion, and they are all thrilled, really thrilled that these accords took place, because now they feel they could do commerce and business with the UAE, and that's what they were looking for. And there have been many Emiratis that traveled to Israel also for investment and meeting socially and academically. They have been. Of course, with the corona, it was limited, but now that the doors are opening up, you're going to start seeing many of those delegations. There's, I don't know how many, or maybe over 100 delegation expected right after Sukkot, planning to come here, Jewish delegations.
Are there any Jewish hotels, or do you have to supply food elsewhere?
Well, there are 3 hotels with kosher restaurants and very good hotels. One of them is the Armani, who is in the Burj Khalifa. There is a kosher restaurant. The other one is the Grand Hyatt with a kosher restaurant there. And the other one is the Address Marina, also a very good hotel with a kosher restaurant. Plus, there are 2 kosher caterers. A bagel store is opening up soon. And soon we will have a bakery also, a kosher bakery. And eventually we will have kosher shechita done here in the slaughterhouses of Dubai. I've visited them personally, and we're trying to put everything into place. I don't know if you've seen some of those questions in the chat. Any chance of opening up a publishing company that translates Jewish religious texts into Arabic? Absolutely. If you want to do that, please come. I'm sure many of the Emiratis will appreciate Sidurim in Arabic or Chumashim in Arabic or any Jewish literature in Arabic. How many Jews live in the UAE? There are over 1,000 Jews that live here, but only like 200 to 250 are active in the community. The rest, hopefully, eventually, they will become active. We will eventually have a school. So far, we have, I would say, only 30 children at different ages. But once we establish the community, we will open up a school. We will build up also a mikveh, and of course, a bedin and a kashrut authority, which I already have incorporated. So we have few Jews that can form the congregation.
Here, is there a difference between the royal family and the rest of the population?
Well, the Emirati population is very, very respectful of the government and of the royal family. They adore them. It's a very benevolent monarchy. And so they go along with whatever the decision the royal family does or the government makes. And those decisions are usually by consensus. They're by consensus. They're not edict. They're by consensus, which is good. There are no radical imams in the UAE. There are no radical imams in the UAE. Any radical imam who speaks improperly will be removed. That I could guarantee you. Now, there were no Jews really that left or expelled from the UAE because there was not a Jewish community. Unlike the other 10 Arab countries like Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Yemen, and Aden, where there were Jews and they were either expelled or persecuted because of 1948 establishment of Israel. But there wasn't any Jew here or any Jewish community either here or Saudi Arabia during that time. So no Jew was expelled or went to Israel.
Becca has a good question here.
Yes.
Sorry. Here in the New York City and over much of the United States, we're experiencing alarming incidents of anti-Semitism, which was triggered by the false narrative of Israel being an apartheid state and that Jews are responsible for killing innocent Palestinians, especially children, during the recent war. How can the UAE's relationship with their Jewish population serve as a model of peace and tolerance between Muslims and Jews here in America?
Well, see, the problem, I was attending a meeting with the ambassador of the UAE several months ago, and he was asked by American Jews, how do you deal with extremist element in Islam or Muslims? And his answer was, we don't have that problem in the UAE. That problem is strictly in the US and Europe. And so I would say the same thing. We don't have that problem in the UAE. That problem, unfortunately, is in the West, in the Europe and the USA, for allowing extremist imams or extremist Muslims or Islam believers to basically roam free, say whatever they want, incite violence, incite hatred, and the West doesn't do anything about it. And that's a problem. But here we don't have that problem. There's no such imams, there's no such hateful speeches, there's no such incitement to violence. There's no such thing here. And that's why there is tolerance, coexistence, harmonious living amongst all the population. But that's a challenge that the U.S. and the West, Europe, need to face, because unless they try to resolve it, it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Mindy Stein asked, how can the UAE help the international community understand that they should stop funding UNRWA until the educational textbooks are changed?
Well, they have. Like I said before, they did have, and they are encouraging their partners to stop funding schools and madrasas that they have hateful teaching against the Jews, against peace, or against any other religion. Against any other religion. They believe that radicals have hijacked Islam.
So, is there an attempt by the UAE to export that understanding that the radicals have been doing? They've been
by example. There is. Of course, there is an attempt. They have spoken about it. An article was written yesterday by Dr. Ali Rashid Al-Nuaimi, who is a friend of mine. He holds a very high position in the defense department of the UAE, of the United Arab Emirates. And he wrote a beautiful article. Actually, I think it was published in maybe in the Times of Israel. Let me just take a look in a second. I'll let you know. If you can read it, you'll see basically what is the official position of the UAE when it comes to that. It was published actually in Ynet, believe it or not. It was published in Ynet. It's called U.S. Policy Must Reflect Changes in the New Middle East. That's the article. So yes, the UAE has been trying to, if not export, but teach by example, by writing, by policy, and by stopping the support of radical Islam.
Okay, so there were questions about funding for you. There were questions about how careful you need to be in terms of what you say, since they don't allow anything that is considered radical. Is there a line that you have to be careful about? And then there were questions about the Abraham Accords and should Biden give the PA more power? In my language, he is giving them veto power over the regional stability. Will the Abraham Accords survive that regardless of what the United States does?
The Abraham Accord will survive that, have survived these 11 days without much of anything. I do believe that the Abraham Accord will survive because those accords were between people, not just between governments, unlike the accords with Egypt and Jordan and Israel. But these accords are with society, with the community, with the people to people, government to government. It has survived and it will continue to survive. In fact, it probably will survive even better, given the instability of the policies of the Biden administration in regards to the Middle East.
Well, it sounds like you are just doing the greatest service for Israel and the region, and we thank you. We just thank you, and thank you for coming to speak to us and let us know. I mean, it's been so eye-opening for me, and I hope for the rest of the audience.
We have to be for our people, because if not us, then who?
jbstv.org and click on the donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.